I mean, our work on this area dates back to about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe less, 4 years ago, when we did research on the state of intermediary liability. In fact, CEPESA did research for Uganda. And what we found is that from a regulatory and policy perspective, it was still quite undefined. And I think what we're seeing now is that it's becoming more defined, and not necessarily in a rights-oriented way. I think when it comes to the national, locally based intermediaries, so that would be local internet service providers, they're often quite cautious. They don't have a lot of resources. They're scared of putting a foot wrong and getting on the wrong side of government. So if they are nudged, sometimes informally, a phone call about removing certain content, they will do it. We also have the situation with the operators that their licensing agreements often make them quite vulnerable to having to shut down SMS services, for example, or social media services. I think they're not fighting back enough. I don't think there's enough conversation about it. I don't think there's enough rights-oriented regulation about it, which is why I think the fact that you are creating this forum to have a more discussion about this, why it's so good. And there's a huge gap between, on the one hand, you have the Facebooks and the Googles. They actually can set the agenda. They shape the conversation. They've got mechanisms for dealing with requests from governments for content takedown, but they also have mechanisms for dealing with their consumers, their users, and for being rights compliant. But ultimately they are still trying to maintain an environment in which they can operate and function, provide services and make profits. So there's an element of expediency there as well. But they're stronger, they're offshore, they have huge capacity when it comes to legal resources. A lot of the smaller local operators don't. And then of course the mobile operators have lots of lawyers and staff, but they're not particularly concerned about rights compliance. And I think that for us in Africa is a real frontier. I think we need to engage them, we need to monitor them, we need to have them be more transparent. And I was interested to hear that the CEPESA report on the state of internet freedoms, the 2016 report, seems to suggest that there is more openness coming from those operators in Africa. I think transparency shouldn't be, I feel like being transparent today about what government is asking me to do, therefore I'm going to be transparent. Transparency should be the norm. That should be and government needs to be transparent about their requests, and operators need to be transparent about the requests that they receive, because that's the only way in which you can have public accountability for whether those decisions or those requests are justified or not.